distressed man walked into the minister's office. He explained, "Oh, Pastor, I feel terrible. I just stole a Christmas turkey from someone I know. My family isn't able to buy one, so I stole it. I feel so guilty now that I've done it. Would you please take the turkey so I won't feel so guilty?" "Certainly not. I don't want the turkey," replied the minister. "You must go to the person from whom you stole it and tell them what you have done." "I already did that," said the man. "They wouldn't take the turkey, so now I don't know what to do. Please help me." "Well, in that case, all right, since you've already talked to the person and they wouldn't take it back, then I believe it's appropriate for you and your family to just go home and enjoy the turkey." "Oh, thank you," said the man, and he rushed out of the office. The minister went home and discovered that the family's Christmas turkey had been stolen. Today is a day of celebration. It's a celebration of a birth. You know, and sometimes we always think of the celebration of the birth of Jesus, but it's also a celebration of the birth of you. Think of how we celebrate our birth. When a child is born, there's indeed a lot of celebration. You know, it's a special day. We honor ourselves, we honor other people, we remember that day. It becomes part of our identity. It becomes part of our official record as one that we exist because of our birth, our birthday. And it's extraordinary. So we celebrate every year. And even if you don't celebrate, it's acknowledged in some way. It's there. It's on your birth certificate. You know, every time you want to get a new credit card, what is your date of birth? I mean, everything is about that, your date of birth. And it's a very official in many respects because it's the beginning of the record of your life. On Christmas, we celebrate the birth of Jesus, but we have to remember that Jesus was our example. Jesus was born into an awareness of who he is. As he grew up into the man, he had a Christ consciousness that was so powerful, so evident, that he demonstrated that for all and continues to demonstrate that for all of us for 2,000 years. It's marvelous. It's a wonderful thing. And I want to tell you, it's really interesting that there's two different Christmas stories in the Bible. I don't know if you've ever recognized that. They're not quite the same. Matthew and Luke differ in many ways in their versions of the birth of Jesus. Matthew traces Jesus' roots back to Abraham to emphasize his role in the Jewish Messiah. Luke traces him all the way back to the story of Adam and Eve to emphasize the universal importance of his life and his message. Matthew says the birth was in Bethlehem because that's where Mary and Joseph lived. He has them fleeing from Bethlehem to Egypt to escape Herod. Then later deciding and returning to live in Nazareth because it was a safer distance from Jerusalem. Luke, however, says that they lived in Nazareth and went to Bethlehem for a census. Of course, there is no official record of such a census, but they were forced then to stay in a manger. Luke has shepherds that are there in the story. Matthew has the wise men. So there's all these different pieces that we have woven together to create our Christmas story, to celebrate it. The point is, it's not about a historical event, but that metaphysical event that there was a child that was born that became the man who demonstrated for us what it means to be and live in the Christ consciousness. He is our example of how to do that. And each one of us is born with that Christ consciousness as well. We are born with it. He's the master teacher, and he has been for centuries. And he said to all of us, all that I do, you may do, and more. So he was teaching us so much about what it is to be born into that spiritual realm of Christ consciousness. Now, as we move forward in our lives, we celebrate and we talk about the birth of the Christ consciousness for us on this day. And we celebrate this day as that is born within us. But it's always been there. When you were born, the Christ consciousness was within you. There is nothing to be added to you. The goal that we have is to become aware of that Christ consciousness. Awareness as we continue to grow and evolve into a higher and more loving and more expansive consciousness. What is so significant about today is that we can celebrate that. It's progressive. How have you grown in your evolution of Christ consciousness? And that is what is to be celebrated. Think of all the things that you have done, the love that you have shared, the good things that you have done, the wonderful things you are going to do today and every day as you move forward with your life. That is what we come to celebrate. For we are already born with the Christ consciousness, and now we move to expand it, to let it grow. For each of us, it is an evolution in our growth and our expansion. And that is what we need to celebrate. Wonderful things happen when we move into that place and that wonder of celebration. There's a wonderful Christmas story. It's a wartime story. I know you've heard it before, but I love to tell it again because it talks about how each of us has that Christ consciousness and we move into it in moments in our lives. It was an occasion when a song temporarily halted a war. It took place in France on Christmas Eve in 1914. To the best of my knowledge, this is a true story, although I imagine it's been embellished in just a bit. At the time, the British and German soldiers were huddled in muddy trenches, and they were killing one another, as you do in war. Late on Christmas Eve, the darkness made it impossible for them to even continue with the killing. And so there came about this eerie calm, this eerie silence. No doubt many of the men at the time were thinking about their loved ones and thinking about Christmas, thinking about the night that it was, Christmas Eve. Suddenly a German soldier began to sing, "Still Night, Heilig Nacht." Of course, the British immediately recognized the tune as Silent Night, Holy Night. So spontaneously, several British soldiers began to join the German soldier. And little by little, more voices were added, and suddenly everyone was singing. And the battleground became a common ground to everyone as they all sang this song together in unison. What occurred next is one of the most extraordinary events in military history. One by one, the soldiers on both sides put down their weapons, and they ventured into that no man's land, where it was without country, it was without identity, it was simply about humanity. They came together, shook hands, and continued to sing. When morning came, the war resumed with an order from the commanding officer. We are here to fight, not to fraternize. And so the war resumed. Nevertheless, for a brief moment, Silent Night, Holy Night, was the instrument which reminded two opposing forces that the ultimate loyalty for all of us belongs really not to a country, to an identity, to a role that we play, but to the spiritual essence of who we are and to God. The truth. of who we are. Carl Jung, one of my favorite psychologists, says that the work of the 20th century is to complete the incarnation. The incarnation, the expression of God in and through all of us, dynamically expressed and embraced by all. That is what we are all about. And that is what we are reminded of on a day like today. We must celebrate who we are. We must celebrate that each one of us is a divine expression of God, that each one of us is called to do the things that our master teacher did, and to do more than that, to express the love, to express who we are, and to know the truth of who we are. That is what we are called to celebrate. And the celebration comes in many forms. As a spiritual community, you have much to celebrate. So many wonderful things happening in this wonderful spiritual community. I'm so thrilled for you that you now have a minister. And we'll move forth and expand in your consciousness now as a community. And each one of you individually will now expand in your consciousness. Today, I just invite you to be thinking about what you can celebrate. Celebrate the love that you have. Celebrate who you are. Celebrate what you've done. Celebrate how you collectively bring people together to celebrate this day. Celebrate whatever you find to celebrate, for this is a day of celebration. Not just for the birth of Jesus, who gave us an example of what to do, but for the birth of you. For the birth of you, for your expansion in consciousness. For each day, perhaps each Christmas, it grows. It's progressive. It expands. It's not as though it's black and white, that one day we have it and the next day we don't. We were born with it. Born with that Christ consciousness within us, just as Jesus was. We may not be as evolved as he is or was, but we grow into that. It is progressive. For there will come a day when we will do all that he did and more. So celebrate that. Celebrate all the wonderful things that are unfolding in life. It's so special. It's so wonderful. There's another great little story, and I think it's all about when we truly celebrate who we are and celebrate love in a fun and fashionable way. A lady wrote about an experience that she had buying some toys shortly after Christmas. She says, I almost stumbled over this little boy in the middle of the sidewalk who was so busy playing with the toy that I had to stop and look at him. You know, he was right in the middle, and he had this computer-controlled spaceship and walking man. And it was obvious that he was having a really good time, and all the people were gathering around him looking at this and saying, oh, look at this toy, isn't this really fun? His obvious pleasure suggested to me that some of my boys would delight in that same toy. So I asked the little boy where he got it. And he said, in there, right there, in the store. And he pointed to the shop behind him. So I went in and asked for the toys that the little boy was playing with. And I remarked, well, who is he? And the proprietor was wrapping my purchases. She smiled and said, you might say that that little boy is my Christmas present. A few days ago, he came in and he stared longingly at that spaceship and that, man and all those things. And I asked him, what would you like that for Christmas? And he said, well, Mother says we don't have any money for Christmas this year. And we lost Dad last spring. And he turned to go. Well, it had been a lean season for me, a difficult one, and yet. It was a week before Christmas, so I gave him the spaceship. He was so delighted that he got no further than the sidewalk, where he sat down and started to play with it, put in the batteries, and was having a grand old time. And then the most amazing thing happened. People stopped to talk to him, and I've never had so many customers. I kept count of all the spaceships I sold, and when he got up to go, I called out to him and I gave him a commission. I asked him to come back the next day and the next and add the walking man to his playthings. So I had him playing out on the sidewalk, and he made a great commission of $12 a day and was so thrilled and so happy, and he made me successful for the season. It's those kinds of wonderful stories. There are so many. Each one of you have your Christmas stories, I'm sure. When all of a sudden you are sharing the love that comes with the Christmas story, the love that is about Jesus and his birth. Because it's you. It's your love. It's your Christ consciousness that is evolving, that is progressing, that is moving more and more towards that enlightenment of knowing the truth of who you are. That each one of you is a divine child of God, filled with love and filled with your message of your life. That is something to celebrate. So today, as you move forward through your wonderful day, find things to celebrate. Acknowledge what you have to celebrate. Say to your family, let's celebrate. Celebrate our love. Celebrate our time together. Celebrate whatever it is that brings you joy. So that as you rejoice, you truly do give thanks for in celebrating it as though we are giving thanks for this wonderful day, for the wonderful example that we have in the birth of Jesus, and for the wonderful expression of God in each one of you. Mary, Mary,